This week on List Rate Rank.
When you tell somebody you're a paranormal investigator, they either look at you like you have three heads or they want to tell you their ghost story.
On List Rate Rank, our hosts research various topics and each bring their own top 5 list to the show. Together they debate, discuss, and deliberate, and with the help of an expert, one definitive and indisputable top 5 list is created.
Look at my arm. I have goosebumps just reliving it and retelling it.
This is List Rate Rank.
Welcome to List Rate Rank. I'm David Fedor.
And I'm Felicia Gillespie.
And we are talking today about the paranormal, about hauntings, about all things strange, unexplained phenomena. Felicia, are you excited?
I'm very excited. I love this topic.
I have been, since I have been a kid, a fan of the supernatural, the unexplained, the strange happenings. Of course, I grew up in the 80s, so Ghostbusters was a huge thing. Wore my special Ghostbusters shirt today to record.
I don't know if you're going to speak about this in your list, but have you ever seen a ghost?
That's a loaded question. I will touch upon some experiences in my list. How about you? Are you going to talk about, or have you?
I never have. I've felt some strange things, but I've never seen anything. I've seen something very strange in the sky one time in Kansas, but
yeah,
it may have been an apparition. It looked pretty gigantic. It was bizarre. It was not of this world, I'm going to say. But so for the record, you are a believer.
I don't know what I am.
Okay.
I don't want to label myself.
Right. I would say I'm a skeptic, but I'm open-minded.
I would say I'm a believer, but I'm open-minded.
Okay, awesome. It's perfect.
So, Felicia, are you ready to present your top 5 list?
I am. And a couple days ago, David and I had a shootout, and at high noon, I shot him, and he died. So he lost. So yes. I win, and we'll be doing this with his ghost.
That is correct. Since you have killed me and rendered me bodiless, you get to go first. So, Felicia, what is your number 5 on your list?
Number 5 is the Flying Dutchman. Are you familiar?
Of the sexual position, not of the actual ghost.
Wait, that's a sexual position?
I would have to assume. But you tell me about your Flying Dutchman.
The ghost ship in 1641, they were sailing around the Cape of Good Hope, and a horrible storm came in, and the captain was like, you know what? This is a shortcut. I'm going to take it. And the crew was like, no, don't take it. It's too dangerous. Storms come through here all the time. And he said, no, I'm doing it. And he went, and a storm was coming, and the crew, they were terrified. They said, no, you have to turn around. He said, I'm not doing it, not turning around. They mutinied. He killed the leader of the rebels, threw him overboard. He said, I will make it through this storm if it takes until doomsday. And just then an angel appeared.
What?
Challenged his words. And he said it again. I will make it through this storm until doomsday. And then he sealed the fate of himself, his crew, and his ship. And this happened in apparently 1641. And I like it. It's my number 5, but I like it because it's a ship. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
A gigantic thing. It's a gigantic apparition for people to see. And, there's really not too much saying that it was real, but there were captain logs from ships, royalty ships. 2 princes were traveling, and they said that they saw it. And then there were beachgoers that said, this has been seen all the way up until, let me see, I wrote down what year it was. 1942, up until 1942, people have been saying that they've actually seen this ship. And when they see it, a bunch of beachgoers saw it. They gathered on the beach. They were pointing at it. And it just disappeared into thin air. Wow. And and it's been written about in a couple captain logs too. And they say it's a bad omen. So I think it's cool because it's last because it's not like a crazy story, but
sure.
I think it's cool because it's a ship. Ships are cool.
Ships are cool, and ghost ships are even cooler.
Yeah.
Well, that's nice. The Flying Dutchman.
Flying Dutchman.
All right, here's my number 5. Okay, ready? The Sutton House. It's a house in Indiana, Pennsylvania that I lived in for 1 year when I was in college, and it was haunted.
Nice.
So this house, not to be confused with Sutton Hall, which is a admissions building or administration building on campus. This is the house that was built for the Sutton family, the first president of IUP. It was this mansion that was built at the corner of 6th Street and School Street. Okay. Now this building, as it was being built, there was a rival architect building a house across the street. This is the story as it was told to me, right? And the architects had this battle where like, I'm going to build a better house. No, I'm going to build a better house. So they were building these giant mansions. The guy who created the Sutton house ran out of money and couldn't complete the spire on the top of the house. So he hung himself in it and he died there in the house, right? So this is where I lived. The bathroom, you open the bathroom door, the closet was the incomplete spire. So there was a spiral staircase going up there that was boarded up. So that right there is where the architect reportedly hung himself. When we moved in, the first day that we went to go see the place, we decided to take peace offerings. So we took my roommates, they collected clocks and fans. And I happen to have a fork in my pocket. So we left a clock, a fan, and a fork in the middle of the room. And then we came back the next day. The fan was spinning with all the windows closed and doors closed. The clock, and they always set the clock's hands to 10 and 2. The hands were moved, and the fork was on the other side of the room. So that was,
my God.
It gets weird. So one day I was talking on the phone with my girlfriend who lived back home, and my roommate, Tiffany, she was in the other room, right? So I'm sitting there talking on the phone, and the light in my bedroom started dimming like it was gonna burn out. It's a 12-foot high ceiling. So I was like, this is gonna be a very inconvenient thing to change. I don't want this bulb to burn out. So I go, oh no. And then the light goes ding and turns back on. And I was like, oh, that was weird. And my girlfriend on the phone was like, what? And I was like, oh, the light looked like it was gonna burn out, but it didn't. So then it started doing it again. And I was like, it is gonna burn out. No. And then it went ding and it went back on. And I was like, that's weird. And then it starts dimming again. I go, no. And it goes ding, turns back on. Swear to you, I did that at least a dozen times. It would go, nope, doop. And I would change the interval which I was saying no so that it wouldn't be on like a timer. And to the point where I kept shouting no out enough times where Tiffany came into the room and she was like, what are you doing? I'm like, watch this. The light starts dimming. I go, no. And it goes, ding. And she just like shakes her head and turns around and walks away. She's like, okay. So that is my experience with the ghosts of Sutton House.
Wow. How is this not your number one? I'm already like, I have goosebumps. That's incredible. That one's pretty awesome that you have a personal experience. My number 4 is going to be the world famous Comedy Store in Los Angeles, which is apparently haunted. A lot of comedians have stories about it, and it used to be a nightclub owned by the American mobster Bugsy Siegel, and people were murdered there. Yeah, people were murdered there. They performed abortions on prostitutes there. They think that's why one of the rooms is called the Belly Room, because after that. But there are a lot of stories about doors slamming, and actually I think Sam Kinison was living there or staying there at some point, and he was sleeping on the stage one night, and some other comic claims that he saw Sam Kinison levitating just in midair in the middle of the night while he was sleeping. And then another comedian has the same story, but not about Sam Kinison, about somebody else levitating. And then what was the other one? Oh, faces looking through windows, and then when they go to tell the person to go, they're not allowed back here, there's nobody there, stuff like that. So I think that's pretty cool history. I've never been there. I really want to be there. I'd love to perform there. And they say it feels very strange in certain places in the Comedy Store.
So when the mobster owned it, was it a comedy club then?
No, it was just a nightclub, but it was really a big deal. I think it was in the 40s and the 50s. It was like the place to be. Very popular.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That would be nuts. That would be a weird place to try to perform and be funny in, knowing the history, right?
I know. I want to go there. I want to feel these strange feelings that people are feeling
Awesome.
at church.
Very cool. Well, my number 4 is also a performance venue. How about that?
Nice.
My number 4 is the Cincinnati Music Hall.
Oh, okay.
The Cincinnati Music Hall was built where an insane asylum once stood, and on top of a pauper's grave, which is, just a mass grave where people get buried because they're unknown or unclaimed or just homeless people. When it was first being built, when the music hall was first being built, they, started digging up for the foundation and all this stuff, and just discovered hundreds of skeletons and bones and everything like that. And that's when they found out about, they were like, oh yeah, that's right, this land was used as a mass grave. So that was weird. Even as recently as 2016, they've built expansions and found more bones and found more skeletons. There's a legend of a steamer called the Moselle in Cleveland, which also exploded and killed 150 people in the year 1839. So apparently some of the bodies that were in this explosion were also buried on this property before it was built. This is a quote. When the steamer Moselle exploded her boilers and blew the skulls and limbs and blackened trunks of her passengers all over the city so that falling bodies fell through the roofs of houses, the remains of the victims were gathered together and buried in a spot now covered by the south end of Horticultural Hall.
Oh my God.
And then in 1832, a cholera outbreak in Cincinnati killed like a bunch of people, leaving a bunch of people orphaned. So the Cincinnati orphanage was right next door, and apparently it was called the Pest House because all these kids came down with all these infectious diseases and all that stuff. So they buried a bunch of the orphans on this property as well. So that is a trifecta of an insane asylum, a steamer tragedy, and dead orphans. So this place is, I guess, really has all bunch of weird, strange noises all throughout the night. Like night watchmen just hear stuff, hear knockings, and all kinds of things. It's one of Cincinnati's most haunted and most well-known haunted locations.
Insane. Just one of those tragedies is enough.
Right?
An entire, music hall. My God.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. That is something. I really enjoy that one. Wow. That's a good one. So, okay. Let's kick this up a notch.
There you go. Let's do it.
My number 3 is Willow's Weep. Okay, which is it's known as the most evil haunted house in North America. It's in Indiana. It was built in 1890, and it's in the house was built in the shape of a cross.
Uh-oh.
They say an upside down cross, but it's like, how do you know it's upside down?
Yeah, which way are you looking?
The man who built the house died in the bathtub. 2 people committed suicides. There was a hanging, and 3 men were poisoned. So if all of that is true, that is 7 deaths. And actually, people think the house was built for occult practice, and they found a book. They found occult books buried in the floorboards when they went to renovate it. And the new owner of the house is a paranormal investigator, and he bought it because he believes that it is truly evil.
Nice.
And all the classic things, right? Cabinets slamming, lights appearing, things falling down, things being thrown, people being scratched, bit, disembodied voices, everything you could possibly imagine. So there's a TV series about it, and they're trying to raise money to make a movie about it. And the previous owners have been calling the local news stations and trying to basically say that this guy's nuts. They're like, this never happened when we lived there. We didn't experience anything. Now, but one of the owners, both of his parents died in the house, and he's the one reaching out to the news saying,
Totally
no.
normal.
Yeah, his let's see, his mother had a heart attack in the house, but she died in the hospital. And then his father committed suicide a couple months later, I think. And they go, oh, well, she didn't die in the house, so that doesn't count. And he only committed suicide because he found out he got cancer and couldn't afford the treatment. So that's why he committed suicide. It's like, I don't know. To me, I think there's a lot there. I think there's a lot going on there.
Wow.
So they have had skeptics in the house, and skeptics have said that, the house definitely has a heaviness to it, and that you feel, if you walk through it, you actually get a feeling of being disoriented, and you feel dizzy in certain places. But yeah, I mean, if something has the nickname of the most evil haunted house in North America, there's got to be something to it.
Yeah, and the history there to prove it too, so that's impressive.
Yeah.
Okay, my number 3 is the Brown Lady of Raynham Hall in Norfolk, England. And I think I'm saying that right. Raynham, Raynham. Raynham Hall? It sounds right. So this one was a sentimental addition to my top 5 list because I vividly remember seeing this photograph. It's a very famous photograph of the Brown Lady of Raynham Hall, of a figure of a woman walking down a giant staircase. The mysterious Brown Lady is rumored to be Lady Dorothy Walpole, Walpole. She was part of the family that lived in this house in the 1800s. So in 1936, they had these investigators go and took this picture, and they captured this apparition. A lot of people now say it's a double exposed photo. They were able to recreate it, blah, blah, blah. Either way, when I checked out a ghost book out of my elementary school library and I saw this photo, it set my imagination crazy. And I could still remember that feeling, seeing that photo. I don't know why or how a library of elementary school had a ghost book with all these vicious, gross, or like scary photos in it, but it was great. So that's my number 3, the Brown Lady of Raynham Hall.
Oh my God, I love that one, and I love that it's in a different country. They have a lot of. That's in England, London. You said
Norfolk, England.
Okay, yeah, a lot of haunting stories out of there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh! For my number 2, I picked a person who I believe is haunted. Probably just mentally ill, but maybe possessed by something. Maybe some kind of weird energy attached to her. Her name is let's see here. Doris Bither. This is in 1974 in Culver City, California. This is a pretty famous one. She was in a bookstore, heard some paranormal investigators giving a lecture about paranormal investigation, goes over to them and says, "Hey, my house is haunted. I hear, I'm getting attacked. My 4 kids are getting attacked. My son tried to stop one of the attacks. The ghost broke his arm. My cabinets fly open. I'm seeing lights. And there are 3 ghosts raping me." And the paranormal investigators were like, "Oh, you have sleep paralysis. That's what you've got going on." And they didn't take her seriously. They were like, "Nah, this is not our area." And then her kids started showing up to these people, and they were like, she had 4 kids, and they were like, "No, this is real. You need to come and investigate the house." So that's, they're like, okay. And they went and they investigated, and they saw the lights flickering, but they were like, "Yeah, that's nothing." But then they were interviewing her teenage son, and apparently the kitchen cabinets flew open, and all the pots and pans just fell out of the cabinets. And they were like, "Okay, maybe we should investigate here." And then there was like a weird presence in the bedroom, so they took Polaroids everywhere. None of the Polaroids turned out. They were all white fuzz. They asked Doris to leave the house. She left the house. They did another investigation. Absolutely nothing now. The camera went back to working properly. No weird feelings, no movement, nothing. So they were like, okay, we're going to investigate. They investigate this woman for 10 weeks and her house. And she's claiming that two men are holding her down while a third one rapes her, like almost nightly, and she can't get away from it. And these investigators invited 30 paranormal investigators to this house on the same day, and they all came to witness and just observe. She went into her bedroom, tried to summon the spirits, and apparently, according to the reports, 30 people witnessed a green fog appear in the corner of the room, while the torso of a man appeared from this fog, and then of course none of the cameras captured any of this.
No, of course not. Of course not. Why would it?
Except for one camera that captured an arc of light in the middle of the room while this was going down. So they were like, look, Doris, you should leave this house, right? Doris ups and takes her kids to Texas. From California to Texas. It did not stop. She continued to be attacked. And, and then, of course, I think they made a movie about her. I don't remember what the name of it was, but some movie about her story. And then once that movie came out, she felt like she was being ridiculed, so she went back into hiding. And her kids still claim that all the stories are true. And one of her kids was like, and not only are those stories true, she also became pregnant with the entity's baby. So, there you go. So I think that's an interesting one, that something's going on there with
something
that.
Is definitely going on. I definitely want to look up that movie and watch that movie. Not for the ghost rape stuff, but for the other stuff. Like, yeah. That's not my kink. I got other stuff. My number 2 is the Catacombs of Paris.
Oh, nice.
So the Catacombs of Paris is a 200-mile maze of underground tunnels and crypts that holds the remains of 6 million people. So the walls are lined with bones and skulls, making it horrifically scary, but also weirdly beautiful at the same time. You could still go and take tours of some of it, and people always report strange sightings and sounds in these underground tunnels. Now, a lot of people also try to break in or sneak away from the tours so that they could go and investigate by themselves. It's this weird maze, it's a labyrinth, there's 200 miles. So oftentimes these people get lost. There was like 3 teenagers who got lost there for like 3 days or something. And some people get lost and never find their way out, and then they find dead bodies in there. Sometimes they don't even find the dead bodies. They just disappear completely. So they're saying, like, people get in there and get so disoriented and go mad that they just get lost and add to the death and the weird, gross, like, disgusting.
Ew.
Like, yeah. So the Catacombs of Paris is my number 2.
I love that one. That's a good one. They're so long, people get lost in there and die. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Don't sneak away from the tour. If you go on the tour, stay with the tour guide.
Stay with the group. Okay. My number 1, I'm really excited about. It's just called the Dark Mirror. It is an object.
Okay.
It's not very big. It's a little mirror, and it has dark glass. And apparently, it's one of these things that people use to like a crystal ball where you can look into it and see things and predict the future or whatever. And this woman's mother decided she was going to get into this as a hobby, bought the mirror from an antique place, and ever since she bought it, she became really isolated and distant and started becoming depressed and acting very strangely. And this woman was like, I'm going to go to your house. And then she went to her house and she was like, what's been going on with you? And the woman's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And she had like the mirror in this locked box in the closet. And she was like, I think, something's up with this mirror.
Could it be this strange mirror?
I have it locked in the closet because I think it's evil. I think it's making me want to kill myself, And this woman's like, okay, well, we'll just like sell it. And went to this place called the Traveling Museum of the Paranormal and Occult. This guy picked it up, said, hey, I'll take it. I take haunted stuff all the time. This guy thinks nothing of it, right? Starts leaving it out for people to look into. And people start, like, random people are having these weird experiences, and they're all describing the same experience where they're looking into the mirror and they're seeing themselves as a corpse, as a rotting corpse. And the guy who owns this museum refuses to look into the mirror, and but he sees other people look in, and they think it's a joke, and they look in and they're freaked out, and they have to leave the whole building. They can't do it anymore. One person said they saw their smile, they saw the reflection grin at them in a very creepy way. And so this guy's like, you know what? I'm going to put this thing in my house and see what happens.
Yeah, why not? Why not?
Puts it in his house, but covers it with a black veil. And every morning, the veil is off of the mirror. And sets up a camera, right? Says, let's see what's going on. SD card won't work. It's corrupted. The card is corrupted.
Get it out of your house. Get it out of your house.
It says the card is stacking memory, but he can't view the footage. Also, his cats stare into it. They just stare at the mirror. Like the first time he saw them stare into it, they were doing that like cat like head bobble thing where they're like looking at a squirrel outside, and then wouldn't. And he said that he feels like ever since he got this mirror, it's actually making the other objects in his museum do what people have claimed that those objects do. So he feels like the mirror is feeding off of energy and definitely needs to be interacted with. But he also feels like if somebody did hold on to it for too long, it would like strictly focus its energy on that one person and suck the life out of them.
Would you look into that mirror?
I don't know. I really don't know.
I think we need to find. I think we need to find this traveling museum, and I think we need to.
I agree. I mean, you do it.
If I did it for the podcast, I would have to. Like, it would make myself. I would not want to. Why would I want to? Bring that on myself. But for for views on YouTube, I'd do it.
Yeah, I would want to watch you do it for sure.
All right. Well, that's a crazy, awesome number one. My number one. Now, we were talking about strange sightings, strange ghosts, and things like that. My number one is more towards the creature aspect of hauntings. The Mothman.
I almost picked that one.
Now, Mothman haunted and terrorized a town in West Virginia in the 1960s. People say they see a large man-sized flying demon creature with red glowing eyes and a 10-foot wingspan. And the Mothman is linked to a bridge collapse that killed 46 people. Now, in addition to being seen by this town over the course of a year, this man investigated it in the 70s and wrote a book called The Mothman Prophecies that was turned into a movie. That movie was filmed in Katanning, Pennsylvania, a short drive from Indiana, Pennsylvania, where I attended college and lived at the time at this haunted house. But the reason it's my number one is because I had a Mothman experience.
Oh my God.
So at the time, my friend, actually our mutual friend, Scott, Scott, he and I had a television program on WIUP TV. It was a college TV station. We had a sketch comedy show called Fuzzy Channels. We thought, oh, they're filming a major motion picture less than an hour down the road. We have to go and film a bit at the set and interact with people. Maybe we could get Richard Gere on our show or, something like that. So Scott dressed up as the Mothman, but instead of looking like this scary demon, he dressed up like this nice, pretty white moth, head to toe in these white clothes with white paint all over his face and these tiny little white wings. And we intended on going and filming a comedy bit. We get there, it was a Monday. Apparently they didn't film on Mondays. So the place was completely empty. But all of the signage and everything, like Katanning looked like a 1960s West Virginia town. So we kind of just went and improvised and filmed some stuff around town until this sweet old lady came out of her door and saw us and was like, "Oh, are you here, blah, blah, blah." And we're talking to this sweet old lady, convinced her to be on our show. She invited us in, and she had to get her wig on, her nice wig, and she wore her nice robe. And she proceeded to bring out scrapbook after scrapbook of all this Mothman stuff and interact with Scott in this wonderfully ridiculous way. But that's when all of our camera equipment started experiencing weird things. Like the batteries completely drained on us. I had to plug stuff in, but it wasn't working right. And I remember vividly sitting on the floor, because Scott and this old lady are on this nice little couch that's covered in plastic and everything. And and the viewfinder in the camera goes completely black. I can't see anything. I could hear stuff through my headphones, and I could see the audio being recording, but I couldn't see anything. And Scott could see me fiddle with stuff, and he kind of looks at me. And all of a sudden, inside this black and white viewfinder, which has been black for the past couple minutes, I see this orange glob, this orange thing just start kind of looking at me. And I swear I thought it was like an eye. I thought it was an orange eye looking at me, and I got really freaked out. And the look on my face must have said it, because Scott looked at me and said, "What's wrong?" And I was like, "I don't know, something orange in the viewfinder," or something like that. So we just continue. I pretend to film stuff, and we leave. I don't know if we got any good footage. I don't know if this will work as a bit. We get home, Scott's cleaning up, he's taking off all this stuff. I put the tape in. Everything we shot that day was all black. We didn't get a single second of footage from that entire day. So even the stuff that we filmed outside and in other places was gone. I'm watching the tape, and the moment I saw that orange eye looking at me through the viewfinder, the TV explodes in static with the snow and the staticky snow. And then it cuts back to black, and you hear Scott's voice say, "What is it?" And I said, "I don't know, something weird in the viewfinder." That exact moment of that weird orange thing,
David.
like, look at my arm. I have goosebumps just reliving it and retelling it.
I have goosebumps.
So both of us were ridiculously scared. Scott was like convinced that the Mothman was going to come and get him because he was mocking the Mothman dressed like that. The camera itself was never able to be used again. It was a $10,000 giant, like, cameraman has on his shoulder, completely broken. I gave it to the tech guy, couldn't figure out what was wrong with it. They had to scrap it and use it for parts. The one battery was completely dead, and nothing from that day was ever able to be used.
Listen, did you take drugs before?
No, we made that TV show on Mountain Dew and candy bars.
Oh, that's incredible.
So that is the story of Mothman, and that is my number one.
I thought you made it up. I was like, this isn't real. No, that's not real. But then you told me the rest.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty mind-blowing. That's wow. That story is incredible. You're just gonna win the whole episode. I just can't even compete with that at all.
Well, we do need to get a list of our top 5 to take to Kristy, who will be waiting for us because we're a little bit over schedule here. So both of our number ones make it to our final list. So The Dark Mirror and Mothman will be on our lists. if we would have repeated any other hauntings, those would have made it onto our top 5, but we didn't. So now with the other 8 selections, we need to select 3 of them to make it to the top 5 to present to Kristy.
I'm gonna fight for Doris Bither and the Comedy Store, just because, Comedy Store, gangster, nightclub owned by a gangster, cool, and now a comedy club, and then Doris Bither because, I mean, how could you not, right?
Well, I'll give you both of them because they're both ridiculously amazing, awesome stories. The Comedy Store itself, I love the idea that it's still operational and they still carry on this legacy. And Doris Bither, poor woman has been through enough. She deserves to be on our top 5. So I will make a case for the Cincinnati Music Hall as our last one in there because I love the trifecta of the insane asylum, the dead orphans, and the explosion.
I agree with you. I was going to say the Catacombs of Paris, but you know what? Cincinnati Music Hall, you're right. That's 3 gigantic tragedies, for sure.
3 gigantic tragedies, and sure, some might say a $6 million or 6 million dead people would be a tragedy as well. But I think the scope of the Catacombs of Paris is too broad. I think people could relate more to Cincinnati. So let's do that. So after the break, we'll be joined by Kristy Sumner and present to her the Cincinnati Music Hall, the Comedy Store, Doris Bither, Dark Mirror, and Mothman to rank as our top 5. So stay tuned.
Hey everybody, this is Jeff, the host of Stuff I Never Knew Trivia Game Show podcast. Each week, 3 players from around the world call in and battle it out over 3 rounds of trivia. Each week there's a new show. You'll meet new people from around the world. We have over 80 episodes. We're in season 4. That's the Stuff I Never Knew Trivia Game Show podcast, available everywhere you listen to podcasts. That's StuffINeverKnew.com, StuffINeverKnew.com, that's StuffINeverKnew.com.
All right, welcome back. Kristy Sumner is the founder and lead investigator of Soul Sisters Paranormal, an all-female team of 5 investigators who travel to some of the most historic and reportedly haunted locations in the United States in order to document the history of those locations and to validate the claims of paranormal activity. And today, she is our guest expert in all things paranormal. Kristy, welcome to List Rate Rank.
Thank you so much for having me, David and Felicia. I'm extremely excited to be here tonight.
We're thrilled to have you. We just got done telling each other some of the most fun stories that we've told here on the show.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm really interested to hear what you have to say. Yeah.
Before we dive into our top 5 lists and you share yours,
okay.
Tell me a little bit about what you do. Tell me about Soul Sisters Soul Sisters Paranormal, and your work.
Okay. Well, Soul Sisters Paranormal, as you said in the intro, is an all-female paranormal investigation team. It's made up of myself, my twin sister, our younger sister, and 2 family friends. And I think what kind of makes us unique in the paranormal community is that we also have advanced degrees. So I have a PhD, my twin has a PhD, we've got 2 JDs on the team and a master's holder as well. So when we go into these investigations, we actually go into it with a scientific approach, and we try to go in with a healthy skepticism. And so when we first enter a location, we will do an extensive just tour of the location to account for any environmental factors, light pollution, noise pollution, are there any street lights around? Is there any settling in the building that we can account for? Where the electrical outlets and things like that, that when we conduct our investigations, we can say, okay, we can rule out these environmental factors, and what we're left with is what we call unexplained evidence. And so we'll go to these locations, as I said, we'll do that tour, and then we'll go in and spend the night and do an investigation throughout the night and attempt to make contact with any entities or spirits that are said to be in the locations.
That's awesome. So a lot of people probably know similar styles and similar investigations because of what they see on TV. Mm-hmm. They got people going in and all the gadgets and all the things. Tell me about things that you use, because they make it seem so complicated but yet easy at the same time on the TV shows. So
Yeah,
what do you use?
And I know, just to digress just a tad, the media that you see out there, the television shows, Ghost Hunters, Ghost Adventurers and such, the Dead Files, they've done a great service for us in the community in that they highlight that we are out there doing this. The disservice, however, comes from the fact that they wrap up their entire investigation and scope in 60 minutes. And they have a production team and they go to these locations for 3 or 4 nights and investigate there. And then they have really the funds to go through and do some things that we in the community, a lot of us don't have the funds to do. So most of our investigations last 10, 12, 24 hours. And, we're in there the entire time actually delving into these investigations. So as far as tools, we like to keep it what I would call old school. The tools that I rely on the most are just digital voice recorders. Sony dictation voice recorders, $30 from Amazon. And for me, I feel that our voice recorders capture the most compelling unexplained evidence because whispers and noises and footsteps are those things that I really cannot explain. For example, when we go into a place like a Civil War hospital in Gordonsville, Virginia, and I capture a child's voice, and I know that there's no children on the property, that's something that I cannot explain. If I capture a man's voice and I know that there's no man on the property, again, that's something that I cannot explain. So we actually have 12 voice recorders. We'll leave them in different places on the property when we go in and do the investigations. And we also carry some with us. And then we also have night vision video cameras that will again leave stationary throughout the location. And then we have body cameras that we use. And that's really to give me a timestamp of where everybody is on the property. So if we capture something on an audio recorder, I can look at that timestamp and then I can go back and cross-reference where each of my team members are to make sure that we didn't cause that noise or that phenomena that we're hearing or seeing. So we use those. And then we do have handheld equipment, things that are designed to measure mostly electromagnetic fields or energy fields. So we have 2 gadgets called the K2 meters. And basically what they are they're used by electricians and they find electric outlets and electricity. So for example, if I were to take a K2 meter and stand out in a field somewhere, theoretically it should not go off because there's no power out there. But if I hold it next to a microwave, it'll spike up to what we call the red level. So when I go into a prison or a house where I know there's no electricity, theoretically, I should not get a spike on my K2 meter, but we've had instances where we have had those spikes. Another piece of equipment that we use is what we call the spirit box, and that is just generally speaking, a little AM/FM radio that's been modified to sweep through frequencies. So when you turn it on and you start the sweep rate, it sounds like as it's moving from all these AM stations or through these FM stations. Again, theoretically, the spirits will use the white noise to communicate with us. So when I go into a location and I hear a complete phrase, like for example, in the Ma Barker house that we investigated at, when I hear a phrase saying, "They murdered us, we're the ones dead," you shouldn't hear that because it's sweeping so quickly through frequencies that the likelihood that you're going to hear a full phrase is very, very small.
Wow.
So we use that as handheld equipment. And then we also take in what we call trigger items. And those are items that we take into a location based on the historical research that we've done at those locations. So for example, if we go into a prison and we know one of the prisoners, he liked cigarettes and tobacco and, girly magazines or whatever, we'll take that in as trigger items. If we go into like the Lizzie Borden house, we'll take some different trigger items designed to elicit a response if we can get it from the entities that we're attempting to communicate with. So essentially that's what we take when we do an investigation.
The spirit box you mentioned, that complete sentence that you picked up on, that's fascinating. What are some of the other types of evidence that you've collected over your years of investigations?
Some of the best evidence that we've captured has been those EVPs that I spoke about. Again, we were at the Exchange Hotel in Gordonsville, Virginia, and this was a Civil War. It was built as a hotel, and then during the Civil War, it was transformed into a field hospital. So there is a recording of over 700 deaths, both of Union and Confederate soldiers that died in that hotel. And so what we did that night is we took in our voice recorders and we left one on a bed in a specific room in the hotel. And then there was 2 investigators investigators in the hotel at the time, but the other 3 of us were outside. And during the night, we captured a male's voice, again, saying, "I don't know, I'll be back at 4:30." And it sounds like an elderly gentleman. It's extremely clear. That's the best example of an EVP that we captured. And then the second best one was actually about 3 hours later on that same voice recorder. We got a child's voice saying, "Hi, this is my bed." And to me, that's extremely compelling because the voice recorder is sitting on the bed. So
Yeah.
to me, it's intelligent and it's speaking to the voice recorder like, "Hi, this is my bed. You're on my bed."
Wow.
So that was extremely compelling. When we went to Fort Mifflin in Philadelphia, we one of the another piece of equipment that we take are laser grids, and the idea behind that is we can set these up in an extremely dark room. We have a night vision video camera on them, and our hope is that something will cross the laser beams and we'll be able to pick that up on our camera. And we were fortunate enough to do that at Fort Mifflin. We set up a camera in the doorway of a subterranean casemate, and what a casemate is, it's a small room designed to hold munitions. So it was built during the Revolutionary War, and during that time there was a guy by the name of William Howe who was tried for treason, and he was hung on the fort, in the fort. And so we attempted to make contact with William Howe in that casemate because he was held in solitary confinement in this casemate. So again, it's subterranean. It goes down about 6 feet underground. It has one doorway in or out. There is zero light pollution, again, because it's underground. And so we set up a night vision video camera in the doorway, and about 6 inches in front of it, we set the laser grid. So anything that was going to cross in front of the laser grid, we were going to pick up on the camera. And so we could tell if something stepped over it, because you have to step over the camera to get into the casemate. So during the night, we set that stationary equipment up, and we left. We were in another part of the fort, and during the night, a shadow figure walks directly, crosses all through the laser beam. It moves from right to left, and in my estimation, it's about 5.5 feet tall. And so that was a very compelling piece of evidence that we captured. And in that same casemate, going back to the trigger items, we had left a cigarette and a cup of water. Again, the idea being that anybody in solitary confinement would want those items. So myself and another investigator, Cara, we were the only 2 females in the location. We went down into the casemate, and I said, "Did you see the items that we left for you? We left you water and a cigarette." And both of us heard a male voice saying, "Thank you." And we caught it on all the equipment that we had running that night. Our cameras and our voice recorders captured that "thank you." So again, to me, that's very compelling. We've captured numerous things on our spirit box, again, back to the Ma Barker house, and that's located in Central Florida. That's the location of the 1935 shootout between the FBI and 2 members of the Barker Karpis gang, Ma Barker and her son Fred. They were using this house as a hideout to get away from J. Edgar Hoover. So on January 16th, 1935, J. Edgar Hoover's guys tracked Ma and Fred to this house, and at about 5:30 in the morning, they opened fire on the house, and Ma and Fred were killed in a shootout. And so we have been the only team to investigate at this location, and we were obviously the first to do it, and to date the only. So my sister and I, there was only 2 of us, we went up to what we call the kill room, where Ma and Fred were found, and we had that spirit box again. And this house sits on about 40 acres of complete isolation. There's zero noise pollution, there's zero light pollution. You need a 4-wheel drive vehicle to get to it because of the Florida sand. So I can validate that there was nobody else around except my sister and I. So we turned on the spirit box, and I said, "What happened in this room?" And through the spirit box, it said, "They murdered us. We the ones dead." And excuse me. And so for me, that was a very compelling piece of evidence. Another member of the Barker Karpis gang, who was not in the house, he did not die in the house, but his name was Alvin Karpis. He was great friends with Fred and Ma. And I said, "Alvin, are you here?" And the spirit box said, "Alvin Karpis." And I had never said the last name Karpis, but it came through the spirit box as Alvin Karpis. So again, that to me is extremely compelling. So that's the type of evidence that we get when we go to these locations. You know, we've seen shadow figures in the moment. We've captured things, like I said, on our voice recorders, on our stationary video cameras. So we've been very fortunate through our years of research and investigations to capture some things that we just can't explain.
Those are amazing examples and very impressive. So
Well, thank you.
we're going to present with you the top 5 in no particular order.
Okay.
And your job as expert is to rank them from 5 to 1.
Okay.
So here's the list.
Okay.
The Cincinnati Music Hall,
Okay.
the Comedy Store in Los Angeles,
Okay.
a woman by the name of Doris Bither, an object called the Dark Mirror,
Okay.
and then lastly, the Mothman, the famous legendary West Virginia
Mm-hmm.
creature. So, are you familiar with a lot of the stories regarding those things?
I'm familiar with a couple of them because, obviously in this world, in this community, in the paranormal realm, if you will, there are so many things that can be considered haunted.
Sure.
Anything from houses to objects. And, we're not just talking in the US, we're talking worldwide. But from my experience, based on some of these, I would go, do you want me to rank them now?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. All right. So from 5 to 1, I would go the Comedy Store, number 5. Doors, number 4. Cincinnati Music Hall, 3. Mothman, 2. And the Dark Mirror, 1.
Nice.
Because I've had experiences with 1 and 2, and I know a little bit about 3 and 5, or 3 and 4. Sorry. So for me to rank a mirror or the Dark Mirror as number 1, I do that because I've actually had experiences with mirrors. We were at the Manger Hotel in San Antonio, Texas, and we were actually fortunate enough to capture what we believe is the figure of a woman in that mirror. And when we spoke to the manager of the Manger Hotel, he actually said that was the best piece of paranormal evidence that was captured at the hotel.
Wow.
So he actually uses that from time to time when people talk about reported hauntings. So I do think that mirrors are an extremely valid tool to use with regard to paranormal activity. And I do believe that you have to be careful with mirrors, especially when you're doing something called scrying and trying to actually elicit a response from a mirror. So I do think with some of these that a mirror is a very important tool, but one that you do have to be careful of. The Mothman in West Virginia, obviously I've heard those legends, and I have not personally gone out and tried to find the Mothman or delve very specifically into that legend, but I have friends that have, and they've actually had some different compelling stories. Things from screeches and everything. Not anybody that I've known that has captured it on camera or film, but have gone out there and captured some compelling evidence.
Awesome. Well, thank you for ranking our list the way you did. To sort out the point value. Felicia, you won our round today, 8 points to 7 points.
Ooh.
So Felicia,
Oh, is this close? Very, wow.
by 1 point.
By one.
She had the Dark Mirror, she had Doris Bither and the Comedy Store in LA. I had Cincinnati Music Hall and Mothman from my list. So
okay.
Those were our list. Kristy, if you have your list, please share with us your top 5 that you believe is the most haunted or the most worthy of being talked about today.
Okay. We've actually had the opportunity to go to several of these. So for me, I'll rank what I feel is the top 5 overall, and then I'll give you the top 5 that we've actually been to if you want to do something like that.
Sure.
So in my mind, the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum would be number 1. The Queen Mary would be number 2. The Villisca Axe Murder House would be number 3. The Lizzie Borden House would be number 4, and then Leap Castle in Ireland would be number 5. In my mind.
And anything with the name lunatic or murder house or something like that is very worthy of being on a list. So what about the ones that you personally have been to?
I've been to the Villisca Axe Murder House. I've been to the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. I've been to the Lizzie Borden House. In terms of now ranking in terms of evidence, for us, the ones that we've been to, the number 1 location in terms of evidence that we've captured has been the old Gilchrist County Jail in Trenton, Florida, and that's about an hour's west of Gainesville, Florida. And this is a very small prison. It was built in 1928. It operated until 1968. It's a little two-story structure. It just had 8 cells 4 on the bottom and 4 on the top. And the first time I investigated, I actually was collaborating on this investigation with Miranda Young from Ghost Biker Explorations, and she and I were the only 2 people in the building. And so when we talked to the owner about it, about going in, she said, yes, you guys can go in, but I highly recommend that if you carry weapons, you take them with you, because this is a known drug area. There are things that are a little seedy in the area. So we said, fine, we will do that. So we both had we both had our pistols on us. And so we went in, we started around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So we still had some daylight to kind of get our bearings and to set up our equipment. And so we walked in, and Miranda had a camera and I had a voice recorder, and we were just kind of panning around getting the lay of the land. And a voice said, hey, come back. It was right behind us, and we both heard it. We caught it on our audio. Again, there was nobody else on the property. So that was very compelling just to start off the night. And then we set up, again, night vision video cameras. We left trigger items in some of the rooms. And during the first 3 or 4 hours, we were not really getting anything. Nothing was hitting on our equipment. So Miranda said, I wonder if they think we're law enforcement, because we both had our sidearms. I wonder if they think we're law enforcement. So we said, we're going to take off our pistols. We're going to put them on the cot here to show you that we're not law enforcement. So we put it down. I put mine down, and Miranda puts hers down. She's like, I'm putting it down nice and easy. Directly behind us, a guy says, good. And after that, the night was on. We captured EVPs, some saying, come help me, another EVP saying, kill them. We both saw shadow figures darting between the cells, and we actually captured 2 of them on our night vision video cameras. They cut the laser grids that we had set up, so you see them running from the right and then coming back to the left. We had a camera, which is called an SLS camera. And essentially what that is, it's a camera that's been modified with an iPad that has an algorithm. And what you do with it is you sweep it around, you point it into a room that nobody's in. And the idea is that if it perceives a human form, it'll put that human form as a stick figure on the screen. So we were panning it around a room, and we got 2 stick figures on the screen, and it almost mimicked like one shooting the other one, and then the first one falling down. Jeez. Which was interesting, because that is where in 2001, a drug dealer was killed. He was shot to death in that room. And so again, that was very compelling to us. And so the reason I say it's my best in terms of evidence is because everything that we set up that night in terms of equipment was validating every other piece of equipment. And to me, that's a pure investigation, if I can call it that. So the old Gilchrist County Jail, Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary in Petros, Tennessee would be my next in terms of evidence. We've investigated there twice. We've captured door slams, footsteps. We all saw a shadow figure run across the auditorium that we can't explain. We heard slaps on the wall, things telling us to get out. So Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary would be my next one. The Ma Barker House would be my third in terms of evidence. Again, strictly because we were capturing things that I cannot explain. That was a 2-night investigation. The first night, we actually set up our equipment on January 15th, which was the eve of the anniversary of the shootout. So it would have been 84 years prior that the shootout happened. So we set up our equipment on January 15th, and we left it run alone until the morning of January 16th. So we had night vision video cameras and voice recorders. And then when we went back and looked at that equipment and listened to it, we captured a male voice telling us to get out. We captured what sounded like a chair being dragged across the floor. And then in the kill room where Mom and Freddie were killed, we captured 2 EVPs. The first one said, Freddie. The second one said, yeah, Ma. And the first one said, get ready, which to me is a residual haunting in the fact that I do believe that was what was said in that room 84 years to the day. So that was extremely compelling. My sister and I went back a week later, and that's when we caught on the spirit box and some of the things that we had happen on our REM pod and our K2 meters. So that would be number 3. Number 4 would be the Lizzie Borden house. Again, we were an all-female group. We went in there and we had captured 2 male EVPs. One was a guy saying, hey, I'm right here standing next to you. And that was in the room where Andrew Borden was killed. We captured that on a voice recorder. And then another one was upstairs in the 3rd level. We were talking about our equipment, and right outside the door of that room, a male yelled, ignore it. And we all heard it in the moment.
Wow.
But all of us we were all in that room, but right outside the door, a man yelled, "Ignore it." So that was kind of interesting. And then I would say the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, we captured some amazing evidence there that night. And again, I do feel that the spirits there are those that were subjected to the horrors that occurred while that location was in operation.
Wow. The fascinating things about your stories and the things that you're discovering and the evidence that you're collecting is the quality of like longer like EVPs,
Mm-hmm.
like not just noises that you say, oh, that could be interpreted as this. It's like complete senses or back and forth or intelligent response, and that's amazing. And we'll put up on our website, on our blog, some information about some of these other places that you mentioned, just so people could find a little bit more about these hauntings, because they're all fascinating.
So I don't know if this question makes any sense, but have you ever been anywhere and experienced something that you felt was more than just what would be, because I would consider like a human type of haunting, and something more like demonic, non-human? Have you ever experienced something like that? And then I guess my follow-up question would be, I know you approach this in a very scientific way, but have you ever been anywhere where you felt just so overwhelmed that you were like, I can't even finish this and get investigation?
Let me answer your second part first. We have never had that experience where we have left a location because we couldn't, handle it because of what we were feeling. We did investigate a funeral home in Kosciuszko, Mississippi. We did that in March, so that video has not been released yet. And I would say that was an immense, for me personally, that feeling was very heavy. And I believe that's because of the emotion that is felt in a funeral home. Not many people walk into a funeral home happy. And so this was in operation for decades. And I just think the overwhelming emotion that's there would, really cause us to have that feeling. We didn't leave the investigation, but that's the heaviest that I've felt. In terms of dark energy, again, to your point, we don't go in looking for that. We go in with a more empathic approach, if you will. Not to say that I'm an empath, but we have the empathy of women, being all women. And so when we go in, we legitimately want to tell the story of any entity that could be in there. So we don't necessarily look for demonic or negative. That being said, when we go into some place like Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary, there is that darkness because of what is permeated in the walls based on what it was in operation. There is a report of a demon or a negative spirit that inhabits Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary. We went into the auditorium where it is said to reside. We felt darker, if you will. The dark gets darker, if that makes sense. And so that something's in there. For us, we don't try to provoke it. We don't go in with bravado. What we did in that instance, both instances, because we've been there twice, we left a voice recorder and a night vision video camera in that room. And we said, if you want to communicate with us, here's the means to do so. Otherwise, we're going to step out of your space. We acknowledge that this is your space, and we're going to leave you alone because we have other places on this complex that we can investigate. And so that's really how we deal with it. And it really is we acknowledge you, you're obviously acknowledging us. If you don't want to deal with us, we're not going to deal with you type of situation. And I think that for us, it actually creates that rapport, if you will, because we are legitimately looking for those answers. And I think that's why we've captured some very compelling, unexplainable evidence in the locations that we've gone to. Because for me, as you said, I feel that the spirits that we're communicating with in some form or fashion were humans at one point. And so we go in with that mindset that we want to speak to you on a human level, because, the human existence, if you will, is to be recognized. None of us want to go through life alone. And I feel that's the same thing with the spirits that we're trying to communicate with. And so again, I feel that's why we've been able to capture some compelling evidence.
Wow, that's awesome. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And are you currently for hire? Do people call you and say, come check out my residence, I got something?
We do. Yes, we have people that will call us to investigate their houses or their businesses. And it's not for hire. We do not take money for what we do. We are all self-funded. The places that we go to, we do not take donations or anything like that. We're all self-funded. All of our videos are self-produced. So just kind of to clear that up, we have been called into numerous houses. And, when you tell somebody you're a paranormal investigator, they either look at you like you have three heads, or they want to tell you their ghost story. And so we've really been approached more by the latter. And they say, hey, can you come and check out my location? And a lot of the times they just want to be believed that they're not crazy. So we'll go in. The very first thing that I'll actually do is I'll hand them a couple voice recorders and I'll say, take this to your house, take this to your business, just turn it on when you get home and just let it run through the night. And then we'll listen to it and see if we can find out anything unexplained. I'd say probably about 75% of what we find can be explained by environmental factors. For example, we had a business call us and he said, I just opened this business. I am convinced that there is a haunting in my business. I set up these night vision video cameras and they're going off throughout the night. They're clicking, but I can't see anything moving. But he was convinced there was a haunting. And I said, sure, we will come and investigate. So we went one night and we did an investigation and we were not getting anything active on any of our handheld equipment. We weren't feeling anything. So we left that investigation. But before that, we set up night vision video cameras, our night vision video cameras around the store. And they were not in the same place that his were, but in different locations. And he had a mirror on the side wall, and the storefront was glass. And so when we went to collect the equipment the next morning, I said, did you have any experiences last night? Did your night vision video cameras go off? And he said, yes. And I said, let me see the timestamps. When did that happen? And so he gave me the timestamps and I went back and looked at our night vision video cameras. And what I was finding was his building was on an intersection. So when a car was turning left at the stoplight, the headlights were bouncing off the mirror and hitting his night vision video camera and essentially turning them off and then turning them back on. But when you watch it, it looks like it's clicking off because something is walking in front of it. Mm-hmm. And I told him, I said, I think that if you move the mirror or move the night vision video camera, your haunting, your activity will stop. And it did. And, so we go in with that mindset first, that healthy skepticism to try to debunk anything first. And then barring that, we will say, okay, we've got some things we can't explain here. We've been to residences where we've asked the homeowners to leave and we leave equipment and I've captured male voices. I've captured things going through the laser grid. In that case, we will sit down with the homeowner and say, these are the things that we found. I cannot explain these. So here's what we can do. You can live with it if you feel comfortable. If you just want that validation that something is going on in your house and it hasn't disrupted you. All right, here's the proof. Here's the validation. If you want it removed, we can help you. We can find somebody who can help you bless the house. We can sage the house. We can get a priest in here to put holy water in the house. If you feel that it's harming you in any way, then we'll escalate it to a demonologist that we know. So for us personally, we're just there to find the evidence and give them that validation. But then we have other people that we call to help us assist in the cases if they want those spirits removed.
Excellent. That's a great service.
Well, thank you.
Where can people find more about Soul Sister Paranormal?
Our website is www.soulsistersparanormal.com. And we're also active on Facebook under Soul Sisters Paranormal. And all of our investigation videos can be found on our YouTube channel, again, under Soul Sisters Paranormal.
I just want to say that this is listening to you is absolutely fascinating. Do you guys, you probably don't ever bring guests, right? Because that would interfere with your gathering of evidence, correct?
No, we'd absolutely bring guests. No,
Team up. Next time you're in our area, we're totally going on a thing with you.
Where's your area?
Pittsburgh.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
We absolutely go to Pittsburgh. We can go to the West Virginia State Penitentiary in Moundsville, West Virginia. That was our very first. That was our very first investigation. So for us, we were hooked, absolutely hooked.
That's great. And thank you so much for sharing your stories with us and allowing us to invite ourselves on an investigation with you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for taking the time. And again, when next time we're up there, you can absolutely come with us to the West Virginia State Penitentiary. We will make that happen.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Kristy, for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you both. Have a great evening.
All right, you too. Bye-bye.
Please rate and subscribe to List Rate Rank on Apple, Google, Spotify, or YouTube, and find our bonus content on listraterank.com. Follow @ListRateRank on Twitter and Instagram, like List Rate Rank on Facebook, and join our Facebook group to get in on the fun. Thank you for listening to List Rate Rank.
And many more.
So we definitely will talk about UFOs at some point. because I want to hear your story and I'll tell you mine.